Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series, where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the adventure supplement Traversing Tovag, designed by Dan Kahn for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher. Review copy has been provided. If you're interested in a sponsored review, you can reach out to me via email or Discord or my submission form at roguewatson.com. And if you enjoy this content, consider using my affiliate links for online shopping and supporting me at patreon.com/roguewatson. If you haven't already, please go watch my I have two videos actually. A ranking video for Vecna Eve of Ruin, in which I rank the multiversal chapters from my least favorite to my favorite. Also, you can of course watch my entire Roll20 review of Vecna Eve of Ruin. I will stop right now so you can pause me and go ahead and go watch those videos if you haven't. I'll make sure I pull a nice face so it's not weird. Okay, you're back. Excellent. Or you've already watched the videos because you're amazing. And of course you have. And you keep up with all the excellent content that I put out. I'm going to obviously spoil things a lot. And Eve of Ruin is very much going to be spoiled throughout this review. I ranked the Ravenloft chapter, which is chapter 5 of Vecna Eve of Ruin, at the very bottom of my list of multiversal chapters. Again, you can go watch that whole video as I rant about all the problems that adventure chapter has. I think it does a not great job of showing off Barovia. I think it throws Strahd at the players. I've been told it's technically supposed to be a prequel to Curse of Strahd, which is, I think, even more confusing because I feel like all the campaigns that have happened in 5th edition are all been sequential, and they all kind of reference them as all happening together. And Eve of Ruin is not like Endgame where we're jumping through time or anything. So I had a lot of problem, and of course the whole reusing of Death House thing. I just had a major problem with the whole way that thing is structured, and especially compared to all of the other chapters, it was the weak link to me. Traversing Tovag, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, Tovag, replaces that chapter, the Ravenloft, the Barovia chapter of Eve of Ruin, with Tovag, which is another Dread domain. So technically still Ravenloft, just no longer Barovia, and it is the home domain of Cause the Vampire, who is the former lieutenant, general, right-hand man. It's funny when we're using hand references with Vecna, bit of a pun there. To Vecna, and there's a whole bunch of beef and history there that seems really interesting that Eve of Ruin only really touches on, unfortunately. And he plays a major role. Kaz plays a major role in Eve of Ruin. In fact, one might argue Kaz might actually play a bigger role in Vecna Eve of Ruin than Vecna does. So what Traversing Tovag does is has the party end up in Kaz's home domain of Tovag, and they can locate one of the pieces of the Rod of Seven Parts in that domain. There is an option where you can run this supplement chapter instead of the Barovia chapter, which is probably what I would do because I really didn't like that chapter. Or you could run it as a follow up to that chapter and actually include all the events that happen. And in fact, there's even a note that you can use the same NPC, Sarasunda, I think, Sasuranda, something, Sarsaparilla, some S name that I can't remember. You can use that same NPC that is a major NPC in the Barovia chapter, and you can include her here. If you wanted to have them, for example, like Strahd at the very end of the Barovia chapter, Strahd's teleporting everybody back to where they need to go, and instead teleport, you end up in Tovag. So I'm already very much on board with this concept because I didn't like the Ravenloft chapter. And that being said, I do like this one. I like it a lot. I think it does a great job of the storytelling here. It's much more interesting and relevant to Vecna Eve of Ruin. I guess you could technically run this as its own thing, but I don't think there's quite enough content here to warrant a whole separate adventure, a side journey in this domain of dread. I don't think. Obviously, there's an actual adventure here, and it's not like just the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, where we're just going through and doing information about it. There is a little adventure But it really does feel like a smaller piece of a big pie that is Eve of Ruin. So it is definitely designed, and it says right there on the tin, this is for Vecna Eve of Ruin for replacing Chapter 5, which means all the party is 14th level. Remember, Eve of Ruin, high level adventure, tier 3, tier 4. We're jumping through all those multiversal chapters from like 11 or from 11 from I think it's 11 to like 17 or 18 or something by the time we get to the very end finale. So this is 14th level as we get teleported into Tovag. There's also an option because in the campaign, Kos is disguised as Mordenkainen. That's a huge spoiler for Vecna Eve of Ruin. And if he learns, basically the author realizes like, oh, he's sending the party as just a Kos is disguised as Mordenkainen and is sending the party to go get all of the pieces of the Rod of Seven Parts. And if it suddenly pops up as their next destination is his fucking like home domain, is that a shock for him? And he's like, oh shit, like it's right there. Or did he always know it was there? Like, what's the storytelling? And actually, it does account for that in terms of you can either run it where he does not know it's there, in which case, perhaps his basically the boss you have to fight, one of the bosses you have to fight in Tovag, was successful in getting the piece wherever it was, and then squirreling it away in the domain, but didn't tell Kos about it. So he's like, well, damn, that sucks. We'll get the party to go get it. Or he does know about it, and it's kind of just a like, oh well, yeah, I was getting these pieces just for insurance purposes, but since the party's now going through and getting them all, it's easier for me to maintain my ruse and just let them kind of run amok in my own domain. I feel like the first one is a little bit better, and maybe you can even show Mordenkainen as being particularly, Mordenkainen actually Kos as being particularly upset that like the party's being teleported to Tovag and right in his backyard. But I do enjoy that it accounts for all that. It also includes elements of the Power of Secrets, which is something from Vecna Eve of Ruin campaign specifically, where the party can learn these major secrets, because that's Vecna's whole thing. And these secrets can actually be used in the campaign to provide them with powerful buffs throughout the campaign. Sorry about that. Or they can, hoard these secrets together and then use them at the very end to receive a very cool buff. So I enjoy that the designer maintained the secret aspects and gave some of the major NPCs those secrets the party can learn in keeping with that campaign theme. In terms of the actual adventure, the party is first appears outside of Tor Gorak, which is a great name for a city. Is a just classic, I guess, dystopian city. And all the domains of Dread are dystopian in some way, or really just weird and supernatural, like a Wonderland thing. This one is just a police state, basically. Like Kos is just kind of a dystopian tyrant. So I will say that Tovag maybe is not the most like interesting or exotic of the domains, but I don't think that's necessarily the designer's fault. That just may be what Tovag really is, and it just comes off as generic to me, who's looked at other, more interesting domains that are like, oh, you're in the midst of a zombie apocalypse, or you're in this weird like everybody's in a ballroom like mask, everybody wears masks, or whatever kind of cool crazy thing is happening in all these different domains. This one is just like, well, it's just kind of a normal it's like volcanic, I guess. There's volcanoes spewing, so that kind of sucks. And then it's just run by a tyrant in a police state. Oh, everybody ages like 50% faster. That's kind of random. So yeah, whatever you can work with that is apparently a thing. And I guess there's a whole note about like child soldiers can be a thing here. But the main thing is there are a stormtrooper SS, whatever you want to use your equivalent of, called the Daggers, which is the Kos's like main police force, which are these kind of mid-level CR5 rogue stat blocks that just harass everybody and basically drag them to the army, force them to conscript. And then right now, Kos is off building his army in the plane of Pandemonium, and he's fixing to take on Vecna for the kind of the finale, which is, I believe, the penultimate chapter of Eve of Ruin. So obviously Kos is disguised as Mordenkainen back at the sigil. So he's not in Tovag at the moment. So Tor Gorak, Tovag, these are different areas. So the party appears and they meet Durant, who is a spy stat block. He's just a nice guy who squirrels them away and tries to hide them from the guys knocking on the doors, which are the Daggers, and trying to grab people. just so you can get that feel of like this is a very dystopian like police state land. And then they learn where they need to go. Well, Durant takes them to a local priest named what is his name? Shoot, Vokar. Vokar the Obedient, and Vokar will tell the party in order to leave this domain, you will have to go to the Fortress of Kaz, or slash, they're here probably because they need the Rod of Seven Parts, right? Did they get it from Barovia? Did you run that campaign or that part of the chapter, or are you just replacing it with this one? In which case, the Rod could be here, and obviously would be in the Fortress of Kaz. That's like the main area, and everybody's like, yeah, of course it's going to be there. So in either case, they're pointed to that fortress to go over there. They actually go with Vokar as well. Now, there's a really cool twist with Vokar that I absolutely love, and that is he is secretly a Vecna cultist who works here and basically tries to work against Kaz, which means he's working with the rebels who are trying to fight back against Kaz's oppression and tyranny, because Vecna and Kaz are constantly like at odds with each other. So of course he's going to help the enemies of Kaz. So I think that's a great twist, and it really comes into play at the very end when he becomes like the surprise final boss fight, which is amazing. So a little bit of the adventure is in the town, just meeting these NPCs. Then you travel from Tor Gorak to the Fortress of Kaz. You can see we've got a great little map of the domain right there. And these domain are always kind of these small, just chunks of messed up land. So I love that we get a visual depiction of that. There's a D4 encounter table. They're all scripted encounters with various monsters, or just meeting with the daggers on the way. The most relevant one is a resistance group that you can meet, who is actually returning from the Fortress of Kaz, and one of theirs got left behind. And then of course you find that person, but it turns out that person's actually a Rakshasa in disguise, which feels like a bit of a random element here. But nice little bit of encounters, but there's not a whole lot of content before we get to the Fortress of Kaz. And I thought, okay, well, the fortress must be like the main big area, and it is, but I also thought the fortress is a little small, especially if we're judging this against other chapters in Eve of Ruin. If there's one thing that I had no complaints about on any of the chapters, it's how big their dungeons were. Like, all of them featured at least one big-sized dungeon crawl. Some of them had more things, happening before then, around it or whatever. And others, it was like, no, you're teleported right outside of this dungeon, and that's the whole thing, is the big dungeon. I guess the only one that really doesn't is probably the Avernus Gambler thing. Is not technically a dungeon, but it's just a big casino. This one is designed as a dungeon crawl, though. It's just a little bit short for my taste. They come in, they easily talk their way through the guards, because again, the whole place is a police state. It's guarded by all these daggers everywhere. And what I like, a big bulk of Kaz's forces are in Pandemonium. They're being sent elsewhere, so there's really nobody. It's the classic, like, your villain troops are all out abroad, and so you just need to go into the home base, and it's actually very lightly guarded there. So the party can easily make their way in there. There's a nice bit where they see, like, a stained glass window of Kaz, like, cutting off Vecna's hand. I wish there was a bit more of that, because I don't know how much the party gets to learn through Eve of Ruin, the really great history between Vecna and Kaz. I feel like that's something that could have been doubled down on and explored a lot further. And I have a whole rant in both probably my review and my ranking video, where I talk about how Kaz was a great inclusion, but ultimately underutilized, and I really wanted more story stuff out of Kaz versus turning him into just kind of another villain and obstacle for the party to end up facing. There's a bit where they find a guard in a compromising position. I guess they're just embracing here, but clearly she's trying to get information out of this guard, and she is the resistance fighter that was with the group before, which the party should be able to meet. But it turns out she's actually a Rakshasa who works for Vecna, and she's just trying to get information. But then when they have this fight, she just disappears, and then she never really appears again. The designer does say, like, oh, maybe she can come back. What's it say? Your discretion, she may reappear to assist Vokar in the final battle of this adventure. But otherwise, she just kind of fucks off, and you don't really see anything. So a bit random for there. But there's a secret room with a lot of cool treasure. There's a great sword of deceit you can grab, which, like, dominates the player and tries to take over their brain. Although it's a +2 sword, so maybe it's worth it if you've got a good wisdom save. You fight a Deathlock mastermind with 2 different teleporters. One of them leads to where you need to go. The other one leads into a wall of force in the room where you need to go. So you can end up being trapped. And of course, they'll try to trick you. They are currently performing experiments and enhancing all the conscripts and giving them new abilities. So you can rescue some people in that room. And then the war room just lets you get some more information and kind of realize a lot of the cool teases for what's coming in, what does it say, chapter 10, which is the Pandemonium chapter, where you end up finding out that Lolth is allied with Vecna, and then Kos is trying to fight both of them while freeing that demon using the Rod of Seven Parts. It steals from the party, and it's a really nice tease for all these events to come, as well as just expanding on Kos's whole motivation and stuff. And there's a little bit of traps and riddles and things to explore. So I loved all of that. It's something I think the whole campaign really needed, was, to give me more Kos. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. But then I feel like it's over almost as soon as it begins and we make it to the final room. There's this boss called Tajian the Grim. These are fabulous names, by the way, throughout. And then he's got some daggers with him. He's the guy on the cover, I believe, who can rip out somebody's soul and dealing all this necrotic damage, and has legendary actions and all these wonderful things. The party beats him, and then Vokar basically does like the slow because here's the fun part. Vokar can sense that the party has a link to Vecna. Remember, in Eve of Ruin, the party, through the first chapter, that's kind of their soft adventure hook, is they all become linked to Vecna. And that's what allows them to eventually see all the like rods of seven parts and all these other things, and allows them to use the power of the secrets. The Vecna priest Vokar, the secret Vecna priest Vokar, can sense that. So Vokar thinks the party have been sent here by Vecna in order to do all this. So at the end, he's like, all right, we did it for Lord Vecna. And the party's like, what? Which I think is an amazing story moment. And even better, the party can try to continue the ruse. But at some point, obviously, they're going to want to get their hands on the Rod of Seven Parts instead of relying on to Vokar. And then you end up fighting Vokar. But Vokar is, Tajian was already a CR 12 stat block, so a pretty good boss fight for 14th level at the end of a dungeon. Vokar is a CR 17, like just badass evil cleric stat block, which is amazing. So I just love that it has this like actual final surprise twist fight at the end. A wonderful, cool story moment, very memorable. I think it's awesome. My only, I think, real complaint is that I just expected it to be longer and the dungeon to have just more involved in there, because, if we're comparing it to the other chapters of Eve of Ruin, that is something that they have, which are these massive, massive dungeon crawls, and there's a lot going on in all of them. And this one, I get that Tovag is mostly, empty right now and the fortress is empty, but still, I would think that the Dreadlord's main fortress would be a large, gigantic area also. So when it first like hypes up this, oh shit, we're going to like the vampire's fortress, that's amazing. But it turns out it's actually just not that large. So let's go over my pros and cons for traversing Tovag. Pro, it swaps Barovia for the much more plot relevant Tovag, which is the domain of Kos in Vecna Eve of Ruin. Or you can, as I mentioned, use it as an additional supplement on top of already running Barovia if you wanted to. And it includes the story bits of, if you want to, for example, bring Sasurunda from Barovia into Tovag, you can totally do that. And also, it mentions the fact that, hey, does Kos actually know that the Rod of Seven Part piece is there, or is it a complete shock? It does account for all these different story things, which is wonderful. Pro, utilizes the power of secrets from Eve of Ruin. Excellent. The secrets, by the way, are Kos's secret is the Dark Lord. Oh yeah, the Dark Lord's not here. Which, oh, that's true. The party doesn't know that, right? They think they're going to fight Kos at the end because the party doesn't know what the DM knows. The DM knows that Kos is actually Mordenkainen in the campaign. The party does not know this until much later. So that's actually a whole secret for them. And of course, the other secret is that Vokar is actually a Vecna cultist. Pro, excellent twist betrayal as we go into my next pro, and surprise final boss fight with the Vecna cultist, which is, again, absolutely fabulous. Pro, we get some awesome dungeon and regional map art, something that Dan Kahn has been providing for as long as I've been doing the reviews, I think, which is this just ability for me to immediately take this awesome product and load it up onto a virtual tabletop and, be ready to go with playing an awesome replacement adventure, or in addition to adventure, which is usually what Dan Kahn provides, is like these are, in addition to or filling in the gaps of. This may be the first one, which could actually completely replace a old adventure, which means we are in sync, because I also did not like that adventure. And of course, professional layout and design, which I always expect from a Dan Kahn product. My only real con, well, I'll say I have one more complaint, and that is, why does the dagger stat block, Dan, not have sneak attack? Every other NPC rogue entity has some form of sneak attack, whether it's a 1d6, 3d6, whatever, and it works the same as a rogue's does. The dagger here does have evasion, does have cutting action as a bonus action, has a really unique reaction, and the fact that it can obviously replace attacks, a triple attack with grapple or shove, which is technically something any creature or player character can do, and has a reaction where it can like keeping somebody down, which is fine, but like, why not a sneak attack? It seems kind of crazy to me for the dagger side. But that's not an official con. That was just kind of an observation. The con I have is that I just think the fortress is too small. It's too small. It's too short. I expected more for going into the Dread Domains like main fortress. And just exploring much more of this area. I guess I expected this chapter to be a little bit more as well, because that is something that I think Eve of Ruin does excel at, is these large, cool dungeon crawls that if you wanted to, you could take those out of that campaign and plop them in somewhere else and just run it as a neat dungeon crawl module. I don't think this one would be a very small, tiny dungeon crawl to run. And remember, we're 14th level. The party can handle a lot of stuff at 14th level. You really got to throw a lot of stuff at them, really drain their abilities, their resources. Yes, we have basically the double boss fight here at the end, which is awesome, but I expected maybe a little bit more traps and just some environmental hazards to get through, something else, a few more guards around. Like I wanted a little bit more from the Fortress of Kos itself. Final verdict: traversing Tovag fixes the weakest chapter of Vecna, Eve of Ruin, while smartly staying within the Ravenloft theme and expanding the lore surrounding Kos. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on the channel. And you can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Thank you.